For introductions, Leigh-Ann Buchanan is a founder, investor, and strategic advisor. Her body of work leverages over 15 years of experience as an attorney and social impact executive to explore how equity intersects with tech, innovation, and social investment to transform communities. Her insights and ideas have been featured in the New York Times, Inc. magazine, NPR, PBS, Bloomberg, the American Psychological Association, ABA Journal, and among others. Her diverse portfolio of initiatives include Nyah Project, Tech Equity Miami, Opportunity Connect, and Venture Cafe Miami. And Leigh-Ann has helped unlock $75 million in philanthropic investments to bridge opportunity and access gaps for underrepresented communities. She currently serves as the president and CEO of the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, which we will be talking about today, which accelerates the discovery and commercialization of technologies that solve critical public challenges by investing in startup companies and facilitating collaboration between private innovators and the public sector. I know you're involved in a lot of things. I know we want to talk a lot about the Innovation Authority today, but before we do that, I just kind of want to have you talk through Tech Equity, Nyah Project, how all those things, brought you to now MDIA.
Tom, that's a great question. So I definitely say, in addition to being a recovering attorney, I am a multi-hyphenate. But really, I think at the through line of this work is I like to build new blueprints to solve challenges that I don't see being solved currently. And so often what I have had the privilege to do is to look for problem areas or gap areas and leverage social investment, innovation, and technology to address them. So Nyah Project is an organization that I started. Come on in.
Thank you.
It's dry in here.
Yes, it is.
Nyah Project is an organization I started to clear the pathway to college. I didn't pay for undergrad, law school, executive programs 3 times at Harvard Business, once at NCR and once at Columbia, all because I was able to learn about the cheat code. And what we've done with Nyah Project is we actually, as of yesterday, we calculated it. In the last 11 years, we've unlocked $40 million in scholarships for South Florida students. The 11 students in the fellows program that I coached this past year, they collectively won $9.2 million.
That's impressive.
And recently, when the world shut down and we couldn't do our travel-based fellowships, we took all of that coaching content, put it in a tech platform. It's kind of like Khan Academy for college strategy, so we can scale the impact that we've had with our small fellows program to help other organizations use our content and really help their students not only get into college, but to win scholarships. Tech Equity Miami is another crazy idea I had with Raul, who you know, used to be at Net Foundation, is Net Partnership for Miami. And the idea behind Tech Equity Miami was during the pandemic, there was such a boom. We had upwards of 900 people a day moving to South Florida, tons of VCs, $100 million fund from SoftBank. And we asked ourselves, how do we not become like San Francisco so that tech can actually be a catalyst for creating opportunities for people, unlocking new careers, increasing socioeconomic mobility, creating opportunities for small businesses. So the goal behind Tech Equity Miami is a $100 million philanthropic funders consortium. And we started thinking about the idea in 2021. By 2022, we launched with $55 million in commitments, including $10 million from JP Morgan Chase. And we now, a couple years later, are at $70 million in commitments. And it was a goal of a 5-year project to deploy $100 million into Miami. And what I would say for those that are in the room, this conversation is about innovation. And ultimately, a lot of people would say those are really cool things that you've started. Venture Cafe is something you were a part of. I think everybody has the capacity to innovate. In fact, everybody is an innovator. It's just that there are these barriers that prevent us from seeing that we can innovate. So I think things like the Maker Faire are the really important catalysts that get you into practicing innovation. And I just basically use innovation and tech to solve problems in Miami, make Miami better.
Yeah. Well, and you keep using the word like innovation, right? And so that's a word that a lot of people use in a lot of different ways, has different weight, different meaning, different contexts. How do you define innovation in the context of the regional impact through these programs? And why does it matter now more than ever in a place like Miami-Dade County?
That is such a good question. So I'm actually writing a book on innovators.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time thinking about that question.
Yeah.
So innovation is actually comes from the root of two Latin words, in and novus. It simply means into new. It's just the process of creating something new. It's not creativity, which is like thinking of new ideas. Right. Innovation is where the rubber meets the road, where you can take an idea and make it tangible. So that's like I think an important framing. As it relates to impact on Miami and innovation more broadly, I actually think that the purpose of innovation is to improve the human condition. I think we can do a lot of really cool things like build widgets and build kind of robots, but like a robot that makes life better or easier for someone is actually, I think, fulfilling the mission of the word innovation. So as it relates to Miami, a lot of the projects that I have worked on are about creating opportunity, unlocking opportunity, transforming how a community, for example, gathers for Venture Cafe, accesses scholarship dollars for Nyah Project, tech equity. We've helped people change their income levels by giving them scholarships to upskilling programs, help small businesses scale. And then for Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, the work that I do, we launched our work 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. July will be our 2-year anniversary of our Public Innovation Challenge program. We have recruited more than 470 startups. Wow. That collectively represent more than $6.5 billion in revenue, more than $2 billion in funds raised. But what's important is we have not only invested in 14 solutions, but you can come in. We have been able to get 14 technologies into local government that we're actively piloting around things like traffic, seaweed, how to repurpose the seaweed on the beach so it doesn't make it annoying and noxious and gross to be able to enjoy the water. Things like how to make the airport passenger experience better and seamless for people with, hearing impairments or other psychological impairments. So the work that we're doing is helping startups, but really around improving quality of life. That's awesome.
I'm sure that it's a really difficult challenge for anybody, whether it's a startup or a social entrepreneur, any kind of group that wants to make big changes in the region, to navigate the complexity of civic bureaucracy or academia or all these big institutions that are kind of working towards these solutions. So how does MDIA focus on these startups, and how does it support these folks in that path to navigating all these different complex infrastructures to actually make a change in whichever challenge that they're trying to solve for?
Yeah, I think I'll start it by asking for some audience participation. Has anybody tried to get something done with local governments? Try to get something done with local government, like paying your taxes. You rolled your eyes. No, right? Isn't it a headache?
Yes.
Isn't it frustrating?
Very.
Imagine being a startup company trying to do business with local government. So ultimately, what we're focused on is clearing the pathway to creating opportunities for startups to actually get their foot in the door and bring their technology solutions that actually help our county. You can come in. You won't be interrupting me. Okay. The voice barrier that help our county government serve Miamians better, faster, and more efficiently. And so I'll give you an example of what that looks like. We run a program called the Public Innovation Challenge, where we partner with different departments in Miami-Dade County to help the amazing leaders and the amazing staff there identify problems that technology and the private sector could probably solve a little bit better than they're doing now. And one of the things that I will say is there's a lot of talk in the news about DOGE and what's happening at the federal level. And I think that is the efforts that DOGE is undertaking is in the spirit of efficiency. I actually think that efficiency does not come without empathy. And what we've learned in the process is the county employees that want to do their jobs better sometimes need new processes, new systems, and some outside support, and kind of a different way of thinking that technology and innovation provides. So we partner with them, we'll issue a brand challenge, and instead of going through, come on in if you want to, Instead of going through a traditional RFP process or a request for proposal process, we put the bid out globally. And we say, if you've got a solution, a technology solution that you've built that's ready to be piloted, we can create an opportunity. And what we've seen is in any given challenge, we'll see anywhere between 75 to 150 submissions that come in. That cohort of 470 companies that we have recruited to submit their solutions to the challenges, they represent over 41 different countries across the globe.
I didn't realize it was that broad.
Yeah, we've built a network of about 120 partners, incubators, accelerators, investors, consulate corps, and they spread the word. And what that does is we believe that we can partner with government to make the process better, rather than just saying, you're the problem and there's no solution. So some of the things that we've seen is we've been able to make the pilot process for companies streamlined. So we took the county's process in 90 days, we reworked it to make our work move faster. We've cut the timeline down for a technology company to be able to work with county government. So can anybody guess how long it took from conversation to solution deployed for a startup to be able to test their technology with government? How long? Ooh, that's good. 6 months. Good. Take all guess. Any guesses over here? 2 years? 2 years? 2 years? It was, guess? 18 months was the fastest which I think is a long time.
Yeah.
18 months is a long time.
Yeah.
We have been able to cut that process down to less than 6 months, which is the fastest in the country. And with the most recent challenge that we did with the Department of Transportation, looking for technologies that make it easier to manage traffic around large events like Basel, FIFA's coming up, we're going to get our first solution deployed in 2 months.
Wow.
Our work is about fast tracking, but we do not lose focus on quality, following the rules. But sometimes we recognize some rules don't need to be there, and we're able to work with the procurement department and the attorneys to really focus on what needs to be in place to protect the county and what needs to be removed so that we can help technologies be tested.
Wow. So I've been following this for quite a while, so I'm really excited about all the developers. But I want to kind of set the stage for what these different challenges have been, and explain a little bit of the history of some of the companies that have been funded and then supported through FDIA. So like challenge 1, challenge 2, and just give it like an umbrella overarching story behind that.
So MDIA, for just taking a step back, was co-founded among Mayor Daniela Levine-Cava, who went to Israel and saw the Israeli Innovation Authority and said, how do we do that in Miami? She turned to Chessie De Casada-Covey, who recently stepped down as Chief of Economic Innovation and Development, said, let's build that. And Chessie went to task. I was an original thought partner. And what came out of it was we need an organization that works with government but separate from government, that is funded by government, private sector, and the public sector, to basically be an outside arm to really help our departments move faster, move more efficiently, and find technologies that can be more quickly implemented. So that's the context. July 2023, we launched our first challenge, because I took the role in June 2023.
Oh, wow.
Officially. I kind of was consulting from March.
So in 1 month, you already did your first challenge.
So many things to learn. But the mayor had said, once we get the dollars from the county, I need, within 100 days, you to launch the first challenge. I don't think, and I talked to her about this a lot, I was like, I don't think she realized how much goes into a challenge. So the first challenge was all about repurposing sargassum seaweed. Anybody familiar with the brown seaweed that washes up right about now? It's supposed to be like one of the worst years ever. So that seaweed, it sometimes contains some unhelpful chemicals like arsenic. When it decomposes, it releases really unpleasant odors, but it can be repurposed. So some of the companies that we were able to find, like Algus Organics, they dry the seaweed out and turn it into an organic fertilizer that can be used, as well as they take the feedstock, dry it out, and turn it into sustainable pulp for packing. So a complete kind of circular economy approach. Carbon Wave, one of the companies that we found, they remove a polymer from that seaweed that can be used in biodegradable plastics.
Oh, wow.
And they also are able to remove another element of the seaweed and add it to beauty products and vegan leathers. Exactly. Who knew that all of this icky seaweed could have a use? And before, the county was spending about $4 million to throw it into the landfill. We all know what's going on with our landfill and the incinerator. So that was challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 was with the airport. Has anybody been to the airport recently? Yeah, sometimes. You went to the airport? Did you have fun? So most people don't realize that Miami International Airport is the 12th busiest airport in the world. We move more than 50 million passengers a year. And one of the challenges the airport wanted to address was, how do we make it easier for people to navigate the airport, particularly around getting to offsite locations. Like if you've rented a car at the airport, it is not easy, if you're not familiar with it, to get from the car rental place to the main terminal. Or if you are someone that is hearing impaired, there's a lot of announcements, but there's no written location for the announcements that are happening. So 2 of the technologies that we invested in for the airport challenges are winning technologies. One is called Synapse. And what we did is we took sign language like avatars. This company will translate real-time announcements into sign language.
Oh, wow.
So that welcome kind of display when you're coming into the airport and driving in, it says welcome to Miami. We were able to add a sign language avatar that signed welcome to Miami. And then before you go through security on all of the TVs in Terminal D, at check-in, we had sign language avatars that were signing specific announcements, directing people to specific desks if you have hearing impairments. So that was a really, really cool company. And the other company that was really interesting is called Route Me, and hopefully they'll get a formal contract with the county. When you come out of the baggage claim and you want to know where to go, or you come out of security, you want to know where to go, we added these QR codes that you scan the QR code and it basically pulls up an augmented reality, kind of like Google Maps, like real time, and it gives you turn-by-turn directions of whatever location that you put in. And it will stop when you stop, so it doesn't just like keep going. It recognizes what's going around, and so Route Me was really helpful. We expected to see maybe a couple hundred uses. We saw 5,000 uses of that particular technology in just about a 16-day period, and people actually get positive comments, which folks never do. They're just like, this is so helpful. So that was one challenge. Third challenge, anybody been on a cruise? Fort Miami? So in addition to the cruises, there is Cargo Port, one of the busiest ports in the U.S. And one of the things that I didn't know is we have a landlord port. So you see those kind of cranes. We don't always own all of them. And so the port doesn't know where cargo moves. So what was happening is trucks would come to pick up cargo, but there's no visibility as to whether it's ready, and they wait or they get appointments, they turn around, just not as efficient. So we were looking for technologies that could use computer vision or camera vision, tap into kind of the existing security cameras, put up better cameras, and be able to track the cargo moving throughout the entire port, or also see what cargo is coming in by freight trucks. And so that was really unsexy but important, because if you are ordering things from Amazon and things are delayed because something's stuck at the port, this will allow there to be greater visibility. So that's challenge number 3. Challenge number 4, traffic. Anybody notice an uptick in traffic in the last couple of years at all? So Miami has 2.7 million people. In any given year, we see 27 million visitors. Wow. So it's an exponential increase in the number of people on the road at any given time. It's often concentrated during busy season and around large events. We looked for technologies that could help our transportation department understand how to make better decisions and how to manage traffic more efficiently, particularly in those large events where we just get stuck in gridlock. Going to Art Basel, it literally spent 4.5 hours in traffic in one go, which is unsustainable. And then the last challenge we launched in March was with solid waste. And we're looking for technologies that improve recycling, decontamination rates, processing of organic waste streams like tree clippings and things like that. And so just looking for how to make Miami more sustainable, more environmentally conscious, and also to recycle. We have a target recycling rate of 50%, but really we're less than 30% in terms of our recycling rate. And so we're throwing away a lot of good things that could be more sustainable. So those are our challenges.
A lot.
That's what we've done in less than 2 years.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, how long have you been doing this?
Less than 2 years.
And all that is
All that has happened.
that is incredible.
All that has happened.
So obviously, we do have these huge challenges in the South Florida region. How do you put one over the other? Like what's the priority pipeline? Like how do you decide? Okay, the next challenge is this.
So we have 5 focus areas for Miami-Dade Innovation Authority. I always say like not every challenge that the county government has to address is something that we can deal with. So like before we started, there was a kind of survey within county what challenges should be solved, and one of the challenge ideas was when it gets really cold and there are iguanas and they fall off of the trees, find a way to fix that. And I'm like, not my problem. We're really focused on challenges that fall at the intersection of 3 areas. One, that it is a public issue, that it matters to Miamians. I think each of the things that I talked about that we focused on, you probably had some interaction with at least one of them. If you get your garbage picked up, if you recycle, if you drive, these are things that impact quality of life. Secondly, it has to be scalable. It can't just be a Miami challenge. It's got to be a Miami challenge and maybe a Jacksonville challenge. Something that New York or Chicago or Dallas or Austin, other cities are experiencing. This is because when we work with a company, we want them to have a pathway to growth and working with other municipalities. And we also want to help other municipalities, sister cities, solve problems and learn from our experience. And the third thing, it has to be scalable. It can't be something that impacts just a tiny part of Miami. It's got to be something that impacts, our almost 3 million residents. And so the 5 areas we focus on are housing, healthcare, mobility, resilience, and digital services. And digital services is really just all of the friction points that you experience when you interact with government that could probably be eased by some type of technology or interface. Like I paid my taxes while I was sitting at an event in 5 minutes or less for my house.
Oh, wow.
And that is, I think, how government should work.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned that it can't just solve a challenge here in Miami, it has a scale. So what role does MDIA specifically play in helping those early stage companies scale beyond just Miami-Dade County once they've piloted Bloomberg?
If you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, we're going to try to provide a lot of supports. There are portfolio companies, so we want to create connections. But the main opportunity we're providing, which I didn't say, we actually invest $100,000 in each company that wins our challenge. So we've deployed almost $2 million in investment funding. And we want to create opportunities beyond that. We've realized that we need to focus on municipalities. Because if we can solve the problem of why it's difficult for startups to work with government at scale, then any startup will have an opportunity. So we're actually hyper-focused on, in Miami and then also soon, hopefully in other markets, to start innovation authorities in other cities as well.
Wow.
Which will really create more clear pathways for our startups and other startups to pilot and get public contracts. There's about $759 billion. I mean, pre what's happening right now at the fund level, but $759 billion in procurement opportunity. South Florida alone is more than $25 billion in procurement. Procurement is really just a fancy way of saying how government buys goods and services. It's how you can get a contract for government to be your customer. And the reality is more than 83% of startups that fail say it is because of bureaucratic constraints. It's because that they can't survive 18, 20 months, 24 months, if someone's a couple years of a life cycle just to be able to prove that they can do something faster, better than someone who has a lobbyist.
Yeah. So can you walk us through the process? Like now, somebody out in the crowd, right? They hear about one of the upcoming challenges. They might have a solution for you. What does that process look like for them to get to pitch to you all what they're doing and then beyond?
So we run challenges at least 3 a year.
Mm-hmm.
This year might be a little bit more. And typically what will happen is if you go to our website, mdia.miami, and join our newsletter. We do not send a bunch of random stuff. We send one newsletter every 30 days with specific opportunities. But that is the first way to know what's happening. But if you have a technology and it's got to be more of an advanced technology in the sense that you're ready for a customer, you can always go to our website and submit your technology idea for you to be in our pipeline of solution for we're constantly looking. We only work with companies in connection with the open challenge. So when we have a challenge that's open, we'll email, it'll be on our website, it'll probably be in the Herald, it'll be all over the news. And then we typically leave like a 4 to 6 week window for you to submit your idea. It's a very robust application. And then we do several weeks of due diligence. Come on in. Like, it's way drier in here than it is outside. So grab a seat. I think there are a couple extra chairs over there. Hi. So once you apply, if you advance to the final stages, there is a 45-minute interview with investors, people from county government and the department that you might be piloting, technical advisors to actually validate your solution, and then we make $100,000 investment, send you a wire, and we work with companies. We don't just throw them to the wolves. We actually work with the county and the companies to make sure that this pilot is as successful as it can be. And that's the differentiator between our program and others, is that we're kind of like that concierge, because we know that government isn't always designed toward the startups, and startups don't always know how to navigate big government.
Yeah. So when people come to you, there's, I'm sure, a huge range of the ideas that they're proposing. So like, how do you balance that bold vision of innovation versus like more practical solutions that are being pitched to you? Like, what is the needle on, okay, we want to go really, really big, or focus on the companies that have something very specific that might solve a smaller portion of the big challenge? How do you make those decisions?
So our challenge statements, for example, with solid waste, we were looking for technologies and innovative solutions to waste diversion. That's the break statement, but we will say specifically, we're looking for X, Y, Z use cases. So we give clear direction on the types of more discrete problems you want them to solve. And look, we always say we're not looking for ideas. Ideas are great. Go to the startup lab at the local university to work on those. We're looking to give an opportunity to actually put technology into practice. And so startups that have a solution, ideally it's been deployed somewhere, they have a customer or two, they understand how to address compliance issues with a large government entity, because compliance matters with security protocols, some of the technical exchanges that need to happen. They have to have an open mind, because working with government, I think we make it a lot easier, but like there's just a different level of risk assessment that needs to be done. And I always say, so I'm a recovering attorney, as you know, but like government has to answer to people. They are using public dollars. They are leveraging public trust to engage with any actor. That's why procurement is always a headache. That's why it's harder to get the government as a customer, because their ultimate boss are the voters. And so they try to put a lot of the checks and balances in place to make sure that they're doing right by their constituents. And so a startup has to be able to kind of navigate that back and forth, where if it's the private sector, it'll move really quickly. And then local government or federal government, sometimes slightly slower. And I think the last thing that I'll say is they should also recognize that sometimes solutions aren't what we're looking for. And it's not because there are great solutions, it's just that a pilot wasn't feasible in that instance. I had a company that we looked at and I was like, I would invest in them, but they weren't something that our partners at the department we collaborated with actually wanted to pilot at that point.
Right. And I keep hearing this word, so investment, right? $100,000 is a lot of money. It's very different from a company getting a grant for $100,000 to do something. It's also very different for a company to get a $100,000 contract to do something. MDIA is making an investment in this company. So can you explain a little bit about that relationship and how that specific choice creates a different relationship with you as the entity and the company to help them solve these challenges?
We wanted, we had the option to go with grants, but when we looked at it, we're a nonprofit, so if there's an opportunity for us to have an upside, if this company would ever have a liquidity event, we wouldn't want to let go of that. But I also think it makes our money stickier. As an investor, I think the weather agrees. As an investor, we are not only just coming with the dollars, but like the best part of our work is that pilot opportunity. It's often your first opportunity to validate your solution with a customer. And we chose to make an investment. We use something called a SAFE, which is called a simple agreement for future equity. Basically means we own a portion of your company, but we don't know how much because we'll wait till a later valuation. It's used standard in the industry. It's designed to be friendly to companies. The reason why we make an investment is because pilots with local government have to be done at the expense of the company. And what that meant was many startups don't have $100,000 sitting around to spend their time and resources to be able to work with local government for the chance of getting a future contract. So our investments are designed to defray the cost of a pilot. And it's a really unique model because I think what it means is 470 companies in less than 2 years.
Yeah.
It's definitely a draw of an opportunity for the best solutions.
So now after they've gotten their investment, how does NDIA specifically evaluate the impact and success of that investment? Like, what are the metrics or signals that you look for in these public-private innovation projects?
So there's a couple of sets of metrics that we're looking for. At the project level, did you deliver value? And then how do we measure based off your specific technology, the value that was delivered? And we do that in concert with the departments we collaborate with. And that'll really depend on the type of problem and their specific type of solution. More broadly, some of the things that we look at in measuring impact on the company side, not talk about the county side, is do they get follow-on investment afterwards? Do they get a follow-on contract with this municipality or a future municipality? Do they have an increase in valuation checkpoint every year going forward? You know, a company we invested in recently raised a $14.6 million round of investment after ours.
Wow.
Which means the company is definitely worth a lot more than when we put money in.
Right.
And they're scaling rapidly. One of the companies that, out of one of our challenges, recently signed an agreement for like a bunch of airports. So that's a huge growth opportunity. And then some of the metrics that we look at, which are right now not popular, but I'll still say them. We actually care about making the opportunity to pilot technology accessible to everybody. And so when you look at the demographics of the companies that actually apply, 60% of the companies that apply are led by someone with some type of a diverse identity. 25% are female founder led. And then I think another 30% have some other type of identifier, like immigrant, veteran, LGBTQIA, some type of thing that makes their perspective on how they approach the work, see the world, perhaps unique. Ultimately, we're always looking for the best solution. We do recognize that innovation can come from anywhere.
Right.
So we want to cast a very wide net to make sure everyone has a chance.
And that point that you're bringing up, that you're about to scale into other municipalities, you know, Miami is quickly becoming a hub for tech and entrepreneurship. The first one is MDIA, Miami-Dade Innovation Authority. So what differentiates Miami's innovation ecosystem from other cities, and why start here in Miami-Dade versus in another place?
So I personally think if you can build it in Miami, you can build it anywhere. Mm-hmm. If you look at the demographic distribution of our population, it represents what most major cities are going to look like in the next 10 years, if not already. We are actually geographically closer to other countries than the rest of the United States. Trust me, I've driven out the state of Florida. It is far, far, far. Yeah. And we also historically have had an interesting dynamic in the sense that we're transient but not, right, where so many people, more than 50% of the population in Miami is foreign born. And I think up until relatively recently, people stayed hyper connected to their home countries, either visiting frequently, like my family is originally from Jamaica, even though I grew up in Canada. And there was one point where my mom was living in Jamaica and I was there every weekend. It's like an hour and 10-minute flight, back and forth. So you have like different types of connectivity beyond just the United States. And I think we have some of the same challenges that both big towns and small towns have in terms of our government infrastructure. And so I've always think that Miami is the best laboratory, the best R&D petri dish for validating whether or not something will work. And obviously a local application in a different city is going to look different, feel different,
Right.
but I definitely think you could check all the boxes by just starting here.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of changes happening right now in the federal level and the state level. The technology right now is in a breakneck pace with robotics and AI and all these new changes happening all at once. People are kind of overwhelmed with the rate of change happening all around them. So as MDIA, where do you see the greatest opportunities for growth or collaboration in all of these changes, right? For the public sector, for the private startups, for community stakeholders within the next like 3 to 5 years?
So one of the things that I think is interesting is people are afraid of change. It changes the one thing that we are most certain of.
Yeah.
Things are always going to be changing. Technology is always going to be disrupting, how we live our lives, how we interact with each other. I think the question is, if change is happening, how are you framing it? How are you using it as either something that can disrupt or something to create opportunity?
Right.
So with what you're seeing at the federal level, particularly around this conversation of efficiency, I think efficiency matters. I do think governments do need to be thinking about what's the smartest, most effective and efficient way you can deliver value to your constituents. And so there's a lot of disruption happening, but it could be really helpful for end users. So I'm very optimistic in some regard that, at least with our work, we are driving efficiency through technology. We're actually taking processes that, would have taken months and months and months of people, and allowing people to focus on more high value tasks and then streamlining a lot of things that just create bloat. And I think that what folks need to be mindful of is how do we become efficient and effective while still maintaining our integrity, our values, and our purpose. And remembering that the purpose of innovation is to improve the human condition. And so it's not just about using technology and creating efficiencies to decrease the number of something. It's really about how do you make things qualitatively better for not just everyone, but also the certain groups in our community that need the extra support.
Right.
I think about people that are visually impaired at the airport. Yeah, we're going to have a technology that specifically focuses on that population. Why? Because they're not having the same experience as everybody else. And so it's about having values and integrity that you apply to this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give us a sneak peek at what the new challenge will be, or?
I honestly don't know.
No?
There's a couple in queue. So the way our challenges work is we try to scope what the pilot will be before we launch the challenge. We actually spent like 3 to 4 months prepping for a challenge before we make it public. And in that regard, I don't know which one's going to hit first.
Okay.
But we're looking at things like on the digital service space, how do we improve some efficiencies for businesses to work with the county? We're looking at housing. Other technologies can improve how quickly or how effectively we are looking at affordable housing issues, because sometimes things get caught in the cog. We're also exploring water and sewer management around specific things like PFAS or fats and solid waste and biosolids. So those are very unsexy things, but trust me, they do impact your life.
Yeah. Well, so having this talk at a Maker Faire to me, I think is a little interesting, because Maker Faire is one of the only events that has a really broad spectrum of participation, right? It's not a purely tech event. It's not a purely academic scientific, research symposium. It's not a startup, event, but it brings together all of these people under one roof to collaborate on these kinds of projects, right? So there are people with different proficiencies, right? The technical side, the more business-minded side. Any advice you can give to the people who are making or tinkering or thinking about innovation more broadly, how to step outside of their comfort zone and, bring that level of structure to what they're working on?
Yep.
Because a lot of people are tinkering and they might not yet be at the professional level yet to apply to one of the challenges. but what are the steps between that? Like, what would be the pipeline to get to, the place where they can then apply to a public pitch challenge?
That's a great question. I'll zoom out. So I've been working on this project about innovators.
Right.
When I ran Venture Cafe, we served 55,000 innovators over 5 years. And one of the biggest impediments or barriers to people kind of tapping into their innovator mindset was identity. They couldn't self-identify as an innovator. Like I think I've done some innovative things, but like I literally put innovative in air quotes because I don't feel like an innovator. Like it's not one of the things I would use to describe myself. And so as part of the book that I have coming out, I created like a quiz. Anybody familiar with 5 love languages? Mm-hmm. The adults in the room, maybe? Yes. So it's basically
acts of service.
Many women are familiar. Husbands should be. Trust me, it'll change your lives.
I've learned it.
Exactly. So I wanted to create a quiz that would help me describe like what type of innovator I am. Because I find if you have the language to say like this is what I naturally am innovating around, then that's where I should focus. That's where I'll see more success. And that's where I'll start to gain more confidence and feel better about tinkering it. And so there's 4 types of innovators that I identified. Connectors, those are people that think about how do you reimagine relationships. Distributors, those are people that just think about reimagining how resources flow. There's disruptors, they reimagine how systems operate. And influencers, not the social media kind, but these are people that reimagine how power flows, either institutionally or individually. And I think like something like that is a really good first step because then it says, okay, I'm tinkering with something physical or I'm tinkering with the software, but turns out I'm a distributor. That's probably the thing that created like Kiva, which has changed how people not only access funds, but build their credit for different communities that didn't have access to credit building opportunities. Things like Venture Cafe, that was a space for the community to gather. That's a connector style innovation. So I'd say find out what type of innovator you are. Focus on that type of innovation. And then just keep doing it. There are so many barriers to innovation that the culture tells us, that our friends and family tells us, that we tell ourselves with our limiting beliefs and our inner voice. And I would say just keep trying. The beauty of innovation is you will never exhaust your capacity. The more you practice it, the better you will be. And the more you ask questions like, who am I? What type of innovator am I? The more clear and confident you'll become.
Yeah, that's a good, perfect segue into, I want to open it up to the crowd to like ask any questions that you might have about, we just covered like a ton of stuff. I mean, the breadth of work that MDIA has done in the last 2 years is just incredible. And the breadth of work you've done before that, I'm sure there's a question out there about a lot of what you just covered. So anyone crowd? Yeah.
Where's that quiz for what kind of MDIA, right?
Leigh-AnnBuchanan.com. Leigh-AnnBuchanan.com. Leigh-AnnBuchanan.com.
So it's great.
If you come to see me afterwards, I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many does the time of the year?
So we typically, if we do 3 challenges, we'll do 3 to 4 lessons this challenge. So anywhere between like 9 to 10 something.
So the MBI website you mentioned earlier?
Pardon?
The MBI website?
MDIA.Miami.
Just Miami.
MDIA.Miami.
Now you mentioned that you're still fielding new requests for challenges. Does anybody have a suggestion for something that needs to be solved in the South Florida region? What's your biggest pain point?
Right.
Living or working or learning in
Always
South
says
Florida?
traffic.
Yeah.
Weather, because sometimes it could be like.
Literally weather right now, right?
If I could address the weather issues, I would. But to your point, I think one of the things that we're looking at is not solving the weather challenges, but what happens when we have weather like this. If you've noticed, and I've been in Miami almost 20 years, the weather was actually more predictable up until recently. Climate change is a thing, and it's very clearly happening. But more importantly, we didn't have giant flooding after it rained for like an hour. And so the infrastructure of like making sure that you're not getting streets flooded, that they stay safe, is one of the issues that we've looked at and talked about.
So maybe install anti-flooding devices that if like there's like a flood, then sensors detect it and they like open up certain blocks in the road from the water. Well,
Future innovators.
Future engineer.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about I actually was that was my thing. I was like, why don't we have sensors? So we have sensors, but the question is like, when you get the information from the sensors, does it connect to the public information system? And with some of the federal cuts to like NOAA, some of the warnings that we would be getting around flooding will actually decrease.
Right.
But one of the things I learned, I was like, why don't we just drain the water? I'm from a coastal city, but Miami, our water table sits really high. And so with sea level rise, there's actually nowhere for the water to go, as I'm simplifying it.
It's porous. So yeah, the water comes from below.
Below and from outside
Yeah.
and from above.
Yeah.
And so thinking about different types of infrastructure, thinking about more innovative ways to build our houses, our roads. Actually, one way to prevent flooding is to have less concrete. And so when we build our roads, we should be building more green space, because grass is more porous, or there's non-porous surfaces, so that the water can actually sink down at a regular rate. So we've actually overbuilt too much concrete, and we need more just natural runoff and drainage spaces.
Right.
Okay.
so like if the water comes from below and we can't drain the water, why not build a like a pump system that interconnects like coastal cities and then moves the water to cities that don't have like oceans or
Yeah.
or other sources, so they have more water so they have more water.
It's a really good thought.
That's
yeah.
it. Who are your parents?
Um,
Are they still here? Well, wherever his parents are, you should be very proud.
Yeah.
Because that is brilliant. That's actually the type of thinking that we need.
Yeah.
Is people that will see a problem and say, why can't we? I think a lot of times we have a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
This is what I call like ideological scarcity, which says when we have a problem, we don't see it as a design challenge, as an opportunity to say, how might we do X, Y, or Z, instead of like getting frozen,
Right.
which is often what a lot of people do.
Right.
So, to add more to what Jacob just mentioned, so is there any way that, as you mentioned in on the road, you said some grasses absorb the water. So is there any way, like during the building of roads, like for instance, like the highways, like in California, they have more drainage on the side swales straight across to where like when it rains, it goes straight in there. Because I've never been into one, but I've seen it happen to where people are driving and the water is so like a hydro banks that people mix one up. So do you guys foresee that, and this is something that you guys would need to implement on the highways per se?
So that is not something we do, but to your point, I learned about who does it and who's responsible, and that's talk to Tallahassee. So what's interesting about government, because I'm like, why can't we just do a thing? And there's like so many different layers of people that have quote unquote authority or jurisdiction over a particular piece of our infrastructure. And part of something I'd actually like to see, it's something we have done at the port, is gotten everybody from federal, Tallahassee, down to local in alignment around what we're trying to do innovation wise. But in terms of the freeway, we probably wouldn't catch that because that's exclusively DAT. But something that we have that our chief heat officer, who's also advocating for more urban forestry, she has been trying to work on new proposals for our Department of Public Works that do include these additional drainage swells that include actually more canopy, because when we get extreme heat, you can see a up to 10 degree differential in temperature in areas like down here where we've got that canopy and tree cover versus areas where we have the trees.
Yeah. So from what Jacob said, what I think, is there somewhere that we can go to submit our thought process on this whole
Yeah, so if you have a specific technology solution to a challenge or something you think you should cover, just go to our website, nda.miami, click on challenges. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a form to submit your idea. I think there was a couple questions back there.
And, so I came to Miami about 3 years ago, and one thing that surprised me a lot is that even though there are many intermediaries or many companies that have innovative ideas or innovative initiatives on how to make our lives better, it seems that there is also a huge lack of innovation within the regulation itself. So I come from a country that is way underdeveloped at this one. And for example, it is forbidden to use plastic bags to supermarket. And it's nothing innovative. It's just that the regulation started to change towards, I mean, they innovated in the rules, not in the solution, right? So it said, okay, so it's forbidden to use plastic bags, or if you don't separate trash into plastic, like if you don't do your thing at home, the garbage truck doesn't fix your trash. So suddenly you go outside the street and you know who's the bad day, right?
Shame.
Yeah, same way, because you do your part of things. I think that what I haven't seen so much in Miami is that government or regulation accompanying the process of doing things better. And I don't know what's your thought on that. But
I have three thoughts. One, we have to think of what's the cultural ethos in the U.S. versus other countries. I'm from another country. I'm from Canada. I'm sure you've heard a lot about kangaroos. We accept refugees. But in Canada, you get fined for putting organics in your garbage because we recognize that like composting makes sense. Like, why would we throw something away that could be composting into something that's helpful for the environment? We do not even have a composting policy at Miami-Dade County. So like, there's opportunities for growth. I also think to the second point, there's an ethos of like shared outcomes or, shared participation in the outcomes that we experience. Whereas I find, as my personal perspective, that the U.S. is a little bit more individualistic. And so there's often this tension between, individuality versus the collective good. And the collective good says, like, we should probably just not use too much plastic because it doesn't disintegrate and it's really bad for our environment. And so government says, okay, let's do that. And here it becomes very difficult to legislate. I would say with policy changes, the reason why we were an innovation authority and not just a public challenge program is because the innovation authority is thinking more broadly about what are the structural changes that need to be made for the challenge to be most effective. And so there are like process changes that we've made, around a pilot process that literally changed how Miami-Dade County piloted startups. Created a standard form, didn't exist before. They had like ad hoc versions, but something that I do think needs to happen policy-wise here is in Miami-Dade County, once you do a pilot, an ideal pathway would be if it's good and everybody likes it, you should be able to go straight to a public contract. That doesn't exist. Right now you have to go all the way back to an RFP to try to get the thing that you already piloted and just demonstrated that actually serves the constituent. So that's like a small loophole that we want to close that actually many municipalities haven't closed with policy changes.
Okay, so I used to not have a car when I was younger, and had to take the bus everywhere. And there were often times where I would be walking, waiting for a bus, and my phone would die. I don't know if you see, like at bus stops, they have those emplacements where you can wait out of the rain like this. And oftentimes they have electricity running through the freeway. Why don't they have like outlets or USB ports to charge your phone?
I agree. Yeah.
How hard would that be?
I don't know.
So,
They are working. They did pilot.
I know they probably don't want you because they're very guaranteed unknown, but probably have more unknown people charging their phones here. But
Yeah. No, I agree. They did a pilot of like some solar powered smart bus shelters.
yeah,
I think Transit Alliance
I remember
like
that.
collaborated around that, and I don't know what happened with that. but I do know there's an effort to rethink on bus shelters. The Department of Transportation Public Works started with the Better Bus Network, which is how do we improve route efficiency. I think we increased ridership by 20%, which is one of the best bumps in the country, which we just don't talk about anymore. But that's huge. And so I think another phase of how do we increase participation is to make sure the user experience is great. But I'll flag that. I haven't really.
Can I don't think his question. So they did pilot They did pilot that in Broward, and because I was taking the bus myself for a few months, and now the Broward buses now have the USB charging force inside the buses. But what they mentioned to me at the authority is that since they have to rely so much on the amount of sun that the battery shortage for LED light at that time, so they were working more on more lithium battery so that they could resolve that issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we had one last question, right? Did you have a question?
I did.
Yeah. So we'll end with you.
Perfect. So my question was more in the work that you do. Is it more about fixing and sort of reshape the programs that already exist in government to be a little more user friendly, or is it more about trying to put it into your program and make that an easier investment program? Which one's more priority?
I would say our priority is focused on helping municipalities fast track innovation. Fast tracking the procurement and piloting of innovation and innovative solutions and technology. So at the beginning, I was like, oh, it's about startups getting, public contracts. But I am in the business of systems change. And I actually think our work is harder, but way more rewarding if we change the culture of innovation in government, we change the structure of government. And I'll just end with one little anecdote. In one of our challenges, there was a department that when we first were connected, there was one champion. I'd known him for a long time. He said, how can we work with you? The mayor had said, please work with MBIA. And they were like, oh, we have consultants. We're not interested. How do we know you can actually do what you said? Fast forward, with all of the work we've done, not only to change to remediate their technological infrastructure to be able to even pilot the solutions that we found, this department now has a full-time innovation director, all because they have worked with MDIA and they're looking at implementing a pilot process that we developed as their regular business. And so that's what matters, because once we're done with the challenge, or we'll keep doing challenges with them, that has staying power. And we were talking, earlier about how there's a lot of focus on catalytic experiences in Miami. We'll fund the thing at the beginning, and it's not a shiny object anymore, and then it loses steam. Our work is really about, in the long run, creating opportunities to steward innovation so that more companies, more team members can actually lead to better outcomes for KDA.
Well, we're actually just a little over time. I just want to thank you so much for joining us at Baker Faire Miami and sharing what MBIA is doing and how they could get involved. I'm sure some of you still have some questions, so you can pull her aside after we move here. But thank you.
Thank you, everyone.